So, welcome back to day 3 of the Writing Schedule Revamp Challenge. So, it's Connie again. So, after the last couple of days where we tracked our time on Monday and on Tuesday started going through the time that we tracked and finding the places where you could slip in more writing or just use your time a little more wisely. Today, we're going to take something that is going to take up a little bit less of your time than the time tracking, which, we were noting things down all day. You can do this pretty fast, but you are going to need to take out a pen and paper, get out a calculator, and do a little bit of math. It's not too scary math, just grade school type stuff. But today we're doing the math on the writing goals that we've set for ourselves and seeing how realistic they are and what you might need to change if you have a deficit in your goals and the time that you actually have available. Now, hopefully you still got that time tracker that you had before, so you should be able to add up the time the writing time you did on Monday, the writing time you found on Monday, and get a sense of how much writing time you can get in a day. If you haven't done that, I suggest you go back and listen to Monday's video. You can track your time anytime now. We've still got a good over a week before NaNoWriMo begins. So if you are doing this challenge in preparation for NaNoWriMo, you have plenty of time to track your time and find it and see how much it is, and then do the comparison between how much time you have and how much time your goals are going to take you. So here's what we're going to look at today. Let's start this slideshow. Day 3, do the math. So, what do you want to accomplish next month? So I suggest you write it down and get really specific as you can in terms of word count for your goals. So if you're doing NaNoWriMo, that's pretty easy. The goal is write a 50,000 word book in 30 days. And the math also breaks out pretty easy. It's 1,667 words per day if you are writing every single day of November, or if you only want to write on the weekdays and you want to take off Thanksgiving, as many of us in the United States do, then you would only have about 2,500 words per weekday, not counting Thanksgiving as a weekday. So if you divide those words per hour, say you write 1,000 words per hour, and this is a totally arbitrary number, but it doesn't really matter what your number is. Though I encourage you to do, if you don't know exactly about on average how many words per hour you do, I do encourage you before NaNoWriMo begins or before you start taking on a big upcoming goal to do a writing session and get a rough idea. So if you know your words per hour, you just divide that number, either 1,667 or 2,500, by that number, and let's say it's 1,000 to make the math easy. Then you know the work you have to do is 1 hour and 40 minutes per day every single day, or 2.5 hours of work every weekday. But that's a little bit reductive. It is not reductive. It's a little bit that's a little bit broad. It assumes a lot. It assumes that you have already fully plotted or outlined your work, which if you're preparing for NaNoWriMo, you might have, or that you're a pantser, what we call writing by the seat of your pants. That is, you write without an outline, you write without any plan at all, you just sit down and you write. So your writing and coming up with ideas time are one and the same. So it's one number that you have to divide. It also assumes that There's no revision time. You're not revising this work during this particular month. And that is fine if you're doing nano, but it's not so fine for writing in other months. It's not so fine if you are hoping to have a polished product at the end of the month, whether that's a full novel or something shorter. But yeah, eventually you need to revise your work if you want to show it to someone else, if you want to try and get it out in the world. And the nano math really only works for nano, and it doesn't really work for other situations. And it doesn't really work if you're going into nano without a plot, but you are someone who needs time to plot. So let's look at some more complicated goals and get into some more complicated math. So these are, just for an example, I'm going to use myself as a guinea pig here. These are my goals for November. I know that I need to, by the end of the month, get a roughly 4,000 word short story ready for my fiction newsletter subscribers. So I've got a Christmas story ready for them. I really want that done before December starts. Now, I've not started anything on this. I need it to be totally complete and revised and everything. So that's one goal. But I'm also working on a novel, and I might think to myself, wouldn't it be lovely to use some of that nano energy? I know I've got a lot on my plate, so I'm going to take it down from the 50,000 word goal, because I'm not a stickler for the rules. I'm already breaking the rules since I have started this manuscript already. It's not a fresh draft. So I'm just going to aim for 40,000 words on a new novel. I've already plotted the thing. I don't need to revise it in November because it's not going to be completely done in November. So that can wait. So let's break that down. I do know a rough estimate of my words per hour. And my words per hour are probably a bit higher if you don't use dictation. I use dictation, so my words per hour are 2,000 words per hour. And that would be pretty high if I were just typing it on a computer. But it's actually a little bit low for dictation. A lot of people who use dictation will get up to like 4,000 words per hour. But I write from home with 2 small children, so I get interrupted a lot. Anyway, the result is when I break down that 44,000 words divided by 2,000, that's 22 hours of dictation just for the first draft of those 2 projects. But I need some extra time. I know that something is going to come up. Something is going to get me. Even though I'm factoring in constant interruptions with my words per hour, I still know that working from home with 2 tiny kids, their chaos is just always around that corner. So I give myself a pretty generous bunch of extra time. I like to give an extra 50% on that time. So multiply 22 by 1.5, that's 33 hours budgeted. But that's just drafting. What about plotting or outlining? Well, I've got nothing done for the short story, so let's focus on that first. So 4,000 words, that's 3 hours of drafting. I won't bore you with all the math. That's 3 hours of drafting, knowing my dictation speed. Now, I like to, your numbers are totally going to vary from mine, but I provide mine just as my numbers here, my multiplication factors are there. Just if you don't really know what your speed is, this is a place to start. And then you can figure it out as you go, as you take on more projects. But I like to budget my time, multiply my drafting time by 0.75. And that comes to 2.25 hours. So 2.25 hours of outlining time. And I do about the same for revision, another 2.25 hours. Now, what I've got here in the next bullet point, micro outlining for the novel. I've got the big plot pretty much set up for the novel. So for those 40,000 words, I don't need as much outlining time. But because I dictate, and frankly, this is a technique you can use whether you dictate or not, I like to micro outline each scene before I actually write the scene. And it helps me to know exactly where I'm going. It really increases my speed, but it's not nearly as extensive as if I was coming up with the entire plot from the beginning. So my outlining time for my micro outlining is going to be a factor of 0.35. So 22 hours times 0.35. I'm going to budget 10.5 hours micro outlining. Now, if we add all these numbers up, how much time with the drafting, how much time with plotting, the revision, all of it comes to 48 hours over the course of the month. Can I do that? All right. I know a lot of writers do like to write on the weekends, and when I get a little pushed for time, I do that too. But I try really hard not to. So I'm using 18 working days. I'm going to take off Wednesday through Friday. My kids are off school. My husband's a teacher. He's going to be off school. Well, not much is going to get done on Thanksgiving week. So those 3 days are off. I'm left with 18 working days in November. And if I do the math on that, there's 48 hours broken up over 18 working days. That is 2.66 hours. Now, because I've done my time tracking, I've done my schedule, I know that roughly I get about 3.5 hours per work day on my writing business. Which might sound like a lot, but this is my primary job. So if yours is much smaller than that, don't worry. Everybody starts with a really small time percentage to begin with, but that's the percentage that I'm working on right now. It's just like a part-time job. So out of my 3.5 hours per day, I'm using up 2.66. But I've got administrative stuff and marketing stuff for my business too. And that you don't even need to run the subtraction on that to know that it's really not going to leave a whole lot of time left. Yeah, it's really going to leave less than an hour per work day. And that actually might be a fair amount of administrative stuff for even most part-time authors. That might be plenty. But I actually have quite a significant amount of admin, marketing, and just things that aren't writing but are still kind of part of my work. I've got, I write fiction and nonfiction. I've got 2 different newsletters. I run a podcast. I do activities and workshops like this one, and I've got some special non-writing creative projects that I need to start in November so that it can be complete mostly by the holidays and I can relax. So I know I've got a lot going on, and that is just not enough time left over. So let's adjust. Let's try it again. Maybe I only want to budget for 30,000 words on the novel. Without boring you with the math yet again, that would be 37.8 then change hours of writing time, leaving me with a regular work month of 21.3 etc. hours of admin and marketing. And it comes to 1.39 hours per week for admin and marketing. And that's a lot more doable. So that's, again, without boring with too many numbers, it's more like a 60-40 split. 60% writing, 40% admin. Now, why do I keep talking about the admin and marketing side? Because it is often forgotten. Now, if you are a pre-published writer and you don't necessarily have any admin and marketing parts of your business going yet, because you're just focusing on the writing, creating the book, creating the product, getting things ready, and you're not at that stage yet, that is fine. Then all you need to do is to worry about the production, the writing, the pre-writing, the revision, the craft of being a writer. But if you have a book out, or if you have already started doing some marketing work, you need to remember that has to fit into your schedule. Otherwise, you're gonna take on big goals like this, and then the administrative and marketing stuff is going to creep into your personal time. And even, especially for somebody who is writing and juggling a demanding job, juggling demanding family responsibilities, and you're already carving out personal time for this, you don't want it to get so great that it carves out too much. So if you leave that part out, either you're going to be stuck doing admin when you really need to be focused on family or just taking a breather, or you're going to cut out the admin and marketing altogether. And then all the work that you've done, getting yourself an audience and a platform, that starts to trickle away because people don't hear from you often enough. So to recap, this isn't to be a downer in any way, because I think you can set goals, big goals, and do it. But you'd have to be a little bit realistic. Part of setting big challenges is it helps to have a realistic goal. And for many people, 50,000 words is actually a totally realistic goal. So, do the math, do the numbers. If you think you can make it work, oh man, go for it. But I think it helps to get a sense before you get started of what it's really going to be like. Because productivity is as much about managing your expectations as it is about pushing yourself. When you've got expectations that you can realistically meet, and you meet them and you push yourself in small increments forward, that gives you that good feedback. That gives you that, that adrenaline that keeps moving you forward to producing more work, producing better work, and creating a creative life that really works for you. Now, a couple of caveats, again, before we leave. These numbers are super highly personal. So if you're welcome to use my multiplication factors and just kind of rewind the video and look at them again as many times as you need. But your process is probably totally different than mine. You might spend less time on outlining. I spend a whole heck of a lot of time on outlining. And part of that is because I want it to save me some revision time later. So you might spend less time on outlining and more time on revision. You might not have quite such, chaos at every door, and you don't need to budget in quite as much extra time. But I encourage you to, if you're up for the challenge, do a little bit of rough math. So what you need to do these calculations are your words per hour, just an estimate. And if you don't know your words per hour, when you next sit down with the writing session, just time yourself, even if it's like 10 minutes, 20 minutes. You can see how many words you got and do the math from there. So you need your words per hour. You do need to budget in at least a little extra time. that might be 50% extra like me. It might be more like 20% extra. It's up to you. You need some pre-writing time in your budget. Again, it might be more or less than the 0.75 factor that I have. Unless you are a pantser, unless you write by the seat of your pants and you never do any pre-writing at all, then don't worry about it. But everyone eventually, whether you do it during the month of November or not, does need revision time, which again, it might be the same as me with the 0.75 factor, or it might be more or less, but it's up to you. So I hope that this has been helpful as I got really technical in how I budget my time. Now, tomorrow we're coming back. Once we've got all of our numbers, we're looking at the schedule ahead. We're looking back at the time tracking we did, the analysis we did, and coming up with a plan that's going to work for the upcoming month. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we'll be back tomorrow.